Your mind will not stop, you know this feeling. The thoughts that arrive at 2 in the morning and do not leave. The worry that sits just behind everything you do during the day. The moment when something small happens and the mind immediately catastrophizes it into something enormous. You have tried to stop it. You have tried to think your way through it. You have tried distraction, you have tried logic, you have told yourself there is nothing to worry about, and the worry continues anyway. Because anxiety is not a thinking problem, it cannot be solved by thinking harder. The mind that is generating the noise is the same mind you are trying to use to stop it. For centuries, the monks, craftsmen, and samurai of ancient Japan understood this, and they did not try to fix the anxious mind with more thought. They offered something different. A story, not advice, not instruction, a story. The kind that says in 3 minutes what explanation cannot say in 3 hours. That works not by telling the mind what to think, but by showing it something it recognizes from the inside. 10 stories from ancient Japan. Each one a mirror for something the anxious mind is doing that it could quietly stop doing. Find a comfortable position. Let the breath settle on its own. And let the stories do what they have always done. Story 1, The Empty Boat. On a quiet river in Edo, a young monk was rowing upstream. The evening light was golden. The water was still. He had been rowing for an hour in complete peace, the kind of peace that arrives when the body is working and the mind has nothing to manage. Then a boat appeared around the bend heading directly toward him. He called out once, twice. The boat did not change course. He felt the anger rise. The specific anger of someone whose peace has been deliberately disturbed. He shouted. The boat continued. He braced for the collision. The boat struck. He stood ready to release everything he had been holding, and then he looked. The boat was empty. No one inside, just a wooden boat drifting on the current going wherever the river took it. He sat down. The anger had nowhere to go. There was no one to be angry at. There was only the river and the 2 boats and the evening light, unchanged from what it had been before the collision. He sat there for a long time. Eventually, he understood something. The anger had felt like a response to someone's choice, but there had been no choice. There had been no one. The boat had simply drifted. The collision had simply happened. And everything he had felt, the tension, the shouting, the readiness for conflict, had been entirely his own. He picked up the oars and continued upstream. The evening was still golden. The water was still quiet. Nothing had changed except his understanding of what had happened. Most of the things that disturb our peace are empty boats. Not deliberate provocations, not personal attacks, events that drifted into our path the way rivers drift, carrying nothing, meaning nothing, simply there. The anxiety we feel about these events is real. The suffering is real, but the cause we have assigned to it, the intention we have imagined behind it, is often as empty as the boat. When you feel the anger or anxiety rise today, pause for 1 moment before responding. Ask honestly, is there someone actually steering this boat? Story 2, The 2 Arrows. A samurai had lost a battle, not a catastrophic defeat, a training exercise with a younger warrior who had landed a strike he should not have been able to land. The samurai had been caught off guard. He had lost the exchange cleanly and in front of his fellow students. He came to the old monk at the temple that evening. He sat down heavily, said nothing for a while. I have been struck, he said finally. The monk nodded. Does it hurt? The monk asked. Yes. Then you have been struck by the first arrow. The monk said, that pain is real and it is reasonable. You were hit, it hurts. That is the correct response to being hit. The samurai waited. But tell me, the monk continued, for how long since the strike have you been telling yourself that you are a failure, that you are losing your ability? That tomorrow you will be worse and the day after worse still. That the younger warrior will surpass you and that everything you have built will eventually fall apart. The samurai looked at the floor. Since the moment it happened, he admitted. That is the second arrow, the monk said. The first arrow struck you. That was not your choice. The second arrow you are firing at yourself over and over, each shot landing in the same wound. And each shot is new pain added to the original. The first arrow is inevitable. It will arrive for all of us. The second arrow is entirely your own choice. The samurai sat with this. "How do I stop firing the second arrow? You notice when you are holding the bow," the monk said. "That is enough to begin. You cannot stop the first arrow. It will always arrive. But the moment you see the second arrow in your own hand aimed at yourself, you have already made a choice. You can put it down." He paused. "You do not have to stop feeling the pain of the first arrow. That would be dishonest, but you can stop adding to it. Tonight, when the thought comes that you are failing and everything is falling apart, notice that thought. See the bow in your hand and ask honestly, is this thought part of the wound, or is this thought the wounding?" The samurai returned home. The loss still hurt. The first arrow was still there, but he put down the bow. Pain is unavoidable. Suffering is the story we add to pain, the event and then the running commentary on the event. The wound and then the wound reopened 10 times by thought. You will be struck by first arrows. Everyone is. The question is how long you hold the second one. Story 3, The Cracked Cup. A tea master in Kyoto had a cup he loved above all others. It was not expensive, not decorated. A simple earthened cup, slightly irregular, the color of river mud. He had been drinking tea from it every morning for 20 years. One morning, his apprentice arrived to find the master sitting quietly, the cup in his hands. He had dropped it that morning. The cup had cracked, not broken in two, a single crack running from the rim partway down the side. It could still hold tea, but it was cracked. The apprentice expected distress. 20 years, the master's favorite cup. The master handed it to him. "Feel it," the master said. The apprentice held it. The crack was visible, a thin dark line. "This cup was always going to crack," the master said. "From the day it was made, the crack was coming, I just did not know when. And somehow knowing it was always coming makes the crack feel less like a loss." The apprentice looked at the cup. "It is still a good cup," the master said. "It holds tea. The crack does not change that." He took it back, filled it with tea, drank slowly. "I think I may love it more now," he said, "because now I can see its wholeness and its ending at the same time." We carry things in our lives as though they are permanent. Relationships, health, circumstances, roles we occupy. We treat their loss as a departure from the normal state. But the normal state always included the ending, not as pessimism, as a liberation. When we hold things knowing they are already cracked, we hold them more completely, more attentively, with less of the anxious grip of someone trying to prevent what cannot be prevented. The cup still holds tea, that is what matters now. Story 4, Maybe there was an old farmer in a mountain village who had one horse. One morning the horse ran away. The neighbors came. "What terrible misfortune," they said. The farmer looked at them calmly. "Maybe," he said. 3 days later the horse returned, bringing 2 wild horses with it. The neighbors came again. "What incredible luck," they said. "Maybe," the farmer said. His son began training the wild horses. He was thrown from one and broke his leg. "What terrible misfortune," the neighbors said. "Maybe," the farmer said. The following week, soldiers came through the village conscripting all young men for a war in the north. The farmer's son was passed over because of his broken leg. The neighbors had stopped coming by then. They had begun to understand something the farmer had always known. That the mind which insists on labeling every event as good or bad is a mind that will be anxious almost continuously because events refuse to stay labeled. The thing that seems like misfortune becomes the hinge of fortune. The loss that seemed catastrophic becomes the thing that protected you from something worse. The farmer did not say maybe because he was indifferent. He said maybe because he was honest. He did not know what the event would mean, and neither did the neighbors, and neither do we. The anxious mind is not anxious about what happened. It is anxious about what it has decided what happened means, and that meaning is always premature. Maybe is not resignation. Maybe is the honest acknowledgement that the story is not over. Story 5, The Hot Coal. A monk was sitting in meditation at a temple in Nara when a man arrived in visible anger. He had heard of the monk's reputation for wisdom and had decided that the monk was a fraud, a man who pretended at peace while deceiving the vulnerable. He stood at the entrance of the meditation hall and began to speak loudly. He listed everything he believed to be wrong with the monk, his teachings, his demeanor, his followers, everything he could think of to provoke a response. The monk continued to sit. The man grew louder, he moved closer, still no response. Other monks appeared at doorways, watching nervously. The sitting monk did not open his eyes. Finally, exhausted from his own anger, the man stopped. In the silence, the monk opened his eyes. "If someone prepares a meal for you," the monk said quietly, "and you do not eat it, who goes hungry?" The man blinked, confused by the question. "The person who prepared it," he said. "They would have cooked for nothing." "And if someone brings you a gift," the monk continued, "and you decline to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" "To the person who brought it," the man said slowly. "If I do not take it, it remains theirs." "Yes," the monk said, "and so I have not accepted your anger. I have not eaten the meal you prepared. You may take it home with you. It remains entirely yours." The man stood there, the anger he had carried all the way to the temple, the anger he had spent on someone who had not received a single drop of it, was still entirely his own. It had nowhere to go. He had been holding a burning coal, ready to throw it, and the monk had simply not been there to receive the burn. He turned and left. He was quieter on the walk home than he had been in months. The anger that had felt so urgent, so justified, so necessary to express now felt heavy in a different way. Not the hot weight of righteous feeling, the dull weight of something he had been carrying for a long time that no one had asked him to carry. When we are anxious about how others perceive us, when we brace for criticism or carry resentment towards someone who wronged us, we are often holding things tightly that have not been forced upon us. We pick them up voluntarily. The monk did not suppress the man's anger. He did not argue with it. He simply did not receive it. You do not have to receive everything that arrives at your door. Some things can be left on the step. These stories have been carried for centuries because they work not as theory but as mirrors. If they are doing that for you tonight, like this video, one tap, it tells the algorithm this matters. Now we continue. Story 6, The Strawberry. A samurai was fleeing through the mountains when he reached the edge of a cliff. Below him, a long fall. Behind him, a tiger moving through the trees. He found a vine. He grabbed it and lowered himself over the edge. Below, another tiger pacing. He hung between them, no way up, no way down. Then he noticed something growing from the cliff face beside him. A small wild strawberry plant, a single ripe berry, red and full. He reached out, picked it, put it in his mouth. It was the sweetest thing he had ever tasted. This story is not about ignoring danger. The tigers were real, the cliff was real. There was no solution available in that moment. What the samurai understood was that the absence of a solution did not mean the absence of life. The tigers above and below were real, and also the strawberry was real. The sweetness was real. The cliff face in the afternoon light was real. Anxiety tells us that we cannot enjoy anything until the threat is resolved, that the strawberry does not exist as long as the tigers do. But the tigers are often not resolvable in this moment, tomorrow perhaps, or next week, or never. And the strawberry is here now, not as an escape from reality, as a fuller contact with it. When anxiety has taken everything else, something small and real remains. Find it, put it in your mouth. Story 7, The Raft. A student had studied with a Zen master for 7 years. The master had taught him everything. How to sit, how to breathe, how to release attachment, how to be present. The student had practiced faithfully and understood. He believed all that the master had given him. One morning the master told him it was time to leave. "Take everything I have taught you and go," the master said. The student thanked him and left. He walked for 3 days. On the 4th day, he reached a wide river with no bridge. He thought of the master's teaching. He thought of the lesson about the raft. He gathered materials. He built a raft. He crossed the river. On the other bank, he paused with the raft. The master had told him that the teaching was like a raft, that you used it to cross the water and then you set it down. That carrying the raft across dry land was as much a burden as having no raft at all. He looked at what he had built. He set it down at the bank. He walked on lighter. We cling to the things that helped us through difficult times. The beliefs, the habits, the ways of coping that got us across a particular river. And sometimes we carry them long after the river is behind us. The coping mechanism that helped you through a hard year becomes the anxiety itself when you cannot release it on the other bank. The raft was real, the crossing was real, the setting down is equally real. what helped you before does not always need to come with you everywhere. Set it at the bank. Walk on. Story 8. The Mirror. A young samurai came to a swordmaster known for his wisdom. I cannot stop my thoughts. The young man said, they come at night before I sleep and I cannot rest. They come in the early morning before I am fully awake. They follow me through training. I have tried to fight them. I have tried to push them away by sheer force of will. I have tried to fill my mind with other things. Nothing works. The thoughts continue. The master listened without interrupting. Then he led the young man to a room at the back of the temple. In the center of the room stood a large bronze mirror polished to perfect clarity. Look at your reflection, the master said. The samurai looked. His face looked back at him, tired, tense around the eyes. Now stop it, the master said. The samurai looked at the mirror. He tried to hold very still. The reflection held still. He moved slightly and the reflection moved with him. He could not stop it by decision. He could not command it to be still while he was not still. He could not fight it into a different shape. I cannot stop it, the samurai said. Correct. The master said, the mirror is not your enemy. It is simply doing what mirrors do. They reflect, and your thoughts are not your enemy. They are simply doing what thoughts do. They arise, they reflect the state of the mind that contains them, and the attempt to force them still only creates more movement, not less. Every effort to suppress them confirms that they are threats worth fighting, and what we fight becomes larger. He led the samurai away from the mirror. When you stand before the mirror and you are still, what happens? The reflection is still, the samurai said slowly. And when you breathe slowly and naturally, it breathes with me. The master nodded. Your mind is the mirror. You cannot fight your thoughts into stillness. The fighting is itself the agitation. But when you find something still to stand in, the mind follows not because you commanded it, because you gave it something still to reflect. He placed his hand briefly on the young man's shoulder. The breath is always still underneath the thoughts. The body in this room is always present underneath the worry. When the thoughts come, you do not need to stop them. You only need to find what is still underneath them and stand there. The mirror will follow. The anxious mind is often described as an enemy to be defeated. But you cannot defeat a mirror through force. You can only find something still to stand in front of it. The breath, the body, the room, the present moment. When you are still, the mirror stills. Not immediately and not perfectly, but in the direction of stillness. Story 9. The Tea Ceremony. A master of the tea ceremony was preparing for a gathering of important guests. His apprentice had been watching him for an hour. The master moved through the room slowly, every object placed with deliberate attention, the hanging scroll adjusted by a fraction. The single flower in the vase repositioned. The bowl turned until its best side faced the place where the guests would sit, the angle of the ladle considered and reconsidered. The apprentice had been growing increasingly anxious watching this. The guests were important. The occasion mattered. There was much to prepare, and the master was spending all his time on details that no guest would notice. Master, the apprentice finally said, why does every small detail matter so much? The guests will be speaking, drinking, focused on each other. They will not see most of this. The master stopped and looked at him. The guests are not why I do it this way, he said simply. He continued adjusting the bowl. When I place this bowl with complete attention, I am entirely here. Not in the guests' expectations, not in what might go wrong with the gathering, not in what they will think of my preparation. Here with this bowl. In this moment, he set the bowl down. The anxiety that arrives before any important event is the mind going ahead of itself. It has left this room and gone to the event that does not yet exist. It is living in the outcomes it cannot yet know, rehearsing conversations that have not yet happened, preparing for disasters that may never arrive. He gestured to the room around them. This practice is the antidote, not the gathering. This the preparation done with such complete attention to what is here now that the mind has nowhere else to be. When you are fully here with the bowl, you cannot simultaneously be there with the fear. He looked at the apprentice. When the guests arrive tonight, my mind will already know where to be because I have been practicing being here all afternoon. The tea ceremony is not just the ceremony. The preparation is the ceremony. Every deliberate act of complete attention is the practice. the apprentice looked at the room differently. After that, he picked up the ladle and held it with both hands, felt its weight, turned it slowly, set it down in its place. For a moment, the anxiety about the evening guests was simply not there, not suppressed, just absent because he was somewhere else entirely. Here, anxiety before important things is the mind rehearsing outcomes it cannot control. The practice is returning attention to what is actually here. The bowl, the cloth, the breath, not instead of preparation as the deepest preparation of all. Before the next important thing in your life, prepare the room, whatever your room is, with full attention, with complete presence, one thing at a time. Story 10, The Last Lesson. An old Zen master lay dying. His students had gathered. Some sat in composed silence, some wept quietly, some stared at the floor, struggling with what was coming and what would come after. The master had been teaching most of them for more than 20 years. He had been the center of their practice, the reference point for their questions, the steadiness when they were unsteady. They could not imagine who they would be when he was gone. They could not imagine what the practice would be without him at its center. One student, the youngest, had been sitting near the door. He rose and came closer. He knelt near the master. "I am afraid," he said quietly, "not of your death. I understand that is coming and I have accepted it. What I am afraid of is after. Of the years ahead without your guidance, of not knowing how to continue, of getting it wrong with no one to correct me." The master looked at him with clear eyes. "Tell me," the master said, "when I am gone, will the sun still rise tomorrow?" The student paused. "Yes." "Will the river still flow?" "Yes." "Will you still breathe?" The student felt something loosen slightly in his chest. "Yes, yes." "Will the seasons still change? Will the birds still sing in the morning? Will the tea still be warm in the bowl?" "Yes," the student said, "all of that." "Then you will have everything you need." The master said, "The anxiety you feel right now is living in a world that does not yet exist, the world after my death. You are suffering in that world tonight as if you were already there, but you are not there. You are here in this room with me, still present." He was quiet for a moment. "I am still here." He said, "You are still here. This conversation is happening now, not in the future you are afraid of. And this is the practice I have been teaching you for 20 years. To return to what is actually present, not to what might be, not to what you fear will come, to what is here." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. "The future will become the present in its own time. And when it does, you will be here to meet it with everything you have learned, with the practice still in your hands. You will not be ready because you are perfect. You will be ready because you have been practicing returning to the present, and the present will always be somewhere you know how to be." The student sat with him until the end. When the master was gone, the sun did rise. The student breathed. The practice continued, not perfectly, but it continued. That was enough. The anxiety about the future is always a mind that has gone ahead to a place that does not yet exist. A world after the loss, a life on the other side of the difficulty. And it is suffering there in advance for something that has not yet happened. The practice in every story in this video is the same. Return to what is actually here. The breath, the bowl, the room, the conversation still happening, the person still present, the future will arrive. And when it does, you will be here to meet it. You are always here to meet what actually arrives. 10 stories, 10 mirrors, not prescriptions, not instructions, mirrors. Each one reflecting something the anxious mind is doing that it could stop doing. The empty boat that carries no one. The second arrow we fire at ourselves. The cracked cup we already knew would crack. The event we have labeled before we know what it means. The anger we carry that no one asked us to hold. The strawberry on the cliff face. The raft we no longer need to carry. The reflection we cannot fight into stillness. The room we arrange with full attention. The breath that continues. These are not new teachings. They have been carried for centuries because they work, not as theory, as direct contact with what the anxious mind is actually doing. The mind that can see what it is doing has already changed its relationship to it, not fixed, changed. The seeing is the first step. Take the next breath naturally without force. It arrives on its own. That is enough for now. Comment below, "I am here now." Subscribe to BALCK Belt Discipline for ancient wisdom tested by time and confirmed by science. New video every week. The stories have been carried for centuries, they are here when you need them.